Famous people who passed away in 1748. Before we proceed, please subscribe to our channel to support us. Johann Bernoulli. He was born in August 1667 and he died in January 1748. His age was 80 at the time of his death, and the reason for his death was undisclosed. He was a renowned Swiss mathematician. Johann Bernoulli was a key figure in early development of calculus and mathematical physics. The Bernoulli's brothers often worked on the same problems, but not without friction. Their most bitter dispute concerned the Brachster-Kron curve problem, or the equation for the path followed by a particle from one point to another in the shortest amount of time if the particle is acted upon by gravity alone. Johann presented the problem in 1969, offering a reward for its solution. In 1724, Johann entered a competition sponsored by the French Académie Royale des Sciences. Arnold Drakenborch. He was born in January 1684 and he died in January 1748. His age was 63 at the time of his death, and the reason for his death was undisclosed. He was a Dutch classical scholar known for his critical editions of ancient Roman texts and significant contributions to historical studies. His edition of Livy is the work on which his fame chiefly rests. The preface given a particular account of all the literary men who have at different periods commented on the works of Livy. The edition itself is based on that of Gronovius, but he made many important alterations to the authority of manuscripts, which it is probable Gronovius had never seen. Otto Ferdinand von Ebensburg on throne. He was born in August 1677 and he died in February 1748. His age was 70 at the time of his death, and the reason for his death was undisclosed. He was an Austrian field marshal, celebrated for his military leadership during the War of the Austrian Succession and other European conflicts. He was sent to Halle to complete his education, but in 1693 left the university to serve with the Prussian contingent of the Allied army in the Low Countries. He saw extensive service in the War of Grand Alliance and at its close entered the Imperial Army. The War of Spanish Succession soon followed, in which he served with distinction in Italy and on the Rhine till 1709, when he became lieutenant colonel and aide-de-camp to Field Marshal Count Guido Starhemberg in Spain. Elisabeth Thérèse de Lorna. She was born in May 1664 and she died in March 1748. Her age was 83 at the time of her death, and the reason for her death was undisclosed. She was a French noblewoman who became the queen consort of Sardinia. The fifth of her parents' 9 children, she was the only one of her siblings to marry or have children. She was styled Mademoiselle de Commercy at the French royal court, the princedom of Commercy being a subsidiary domain of the House of Lorraine. She was a lady-in-waiting to Marie-Anne de Bourbon, Princess of Conti, a legitimized daughter of Louis XIV of France. George Wade. He was born in 1673 and he died in March 1748. His age was 75 at the time of his death, and the reason for his death was undisclosed. He was an Anglo-Irish British Army officer who served in the 9 Years' War, War of Spanish Succession, Jacobite Rising of 1715, and War of the Quadruple Alliance, before leading the construction of barracks, bridges, and proper roads in Scotland. He went to be a military commander during the War of Austrian Succession and commander-in-chief of forces during the Jacobite Rising of 1745. He became MP for Bath in 1722, retaining the seat for 25 years. His house, built around 1700, is situated next to Bath Abbey and is now a Grade 1 listed building. Johann Gottfried Walther. He was born in September 1684 and he died in March 1748. His age was 63 at the time of his death, and the reason for his death was undisclosed. He was a German composer and music theorist, best known for his Musikalisches Lexikon, one of the earliest music encyclopedias. He was most well known as the compiler of the Musikalisches Lexikon in 1732, an enormous dictionary of music and musicians. Not only was it the first dictionary of musical terms written in German language, it was the first to contain both terms and biographical information about composers and performers up to the early 18th century. William Kent. He was born in 1685 and he died in April 1748. His age was 62 at the time of his death, and the reason for his death was undisclosed. He was an English architect and landscape designer, considered one of the fathers of English landscape garden movement. He began his career as a painter and became principal painter in ordinary or court painter, but his real talent was for design in various media. Kent introduced the Palladian style of architecture into England with the villa at Chiswick House, and also originated the natural style of gardening known as the English landscape garden at Chiswick Stowe Gardens in Buckinghamshire and Rowsham House in Oxfordshire. As a landscape gardener, he revolutionized the layout of estates but had limited knowledge of horticulture. Thomas Lowndes. He was born in 1692 and he died in July 1748. His age was 56 at the time of his death, and the reason for his death was undisclosed. He was the founder of the Loudon Professorship of Astronomy at Cambridge University, England. In 1725, he was appointed Provost Marshal of South Carolina, a post he preferred to hold by deputy. In 1727, he claimed to have taken a prominent part in inducing the British government to purchase Carolina, but he surrendered his patent when the transfer of the colony to the Crown was completed. His patent was renewed in 1730, but he resigned it in 1733. He then brought various impractical schemes before the government to check the illicit trade in wool between Ireland and France, to regulate the paper currency of New England, and to supply the navy with salt from brine. Henry, Duke of Elbeuf. He was born in July 1661 and he died in May 1748. His age was 86 at the time of his death, and the reason for his death was undisclosed. He was a French nobleman and soldier involved in court intrigues and military campaigns of Louis XIV's era. He was a Duke of Elbeuf and member of the House of Lorraine. He succeeded his father, Charles de Lorraine, to the Duchy peerage of Elbeuf. He was also a peer of France, a member of the House of Guise, founded by Claude, Duke of Guise. He was a Prince of Lorraine as a male line descendant of René II, Duke of Lorraine. In his youth, he was not expected to succeed the Duchy peerage of Elbeuf, as his father had a son from a previous marriage, as well as his oldest full brother, Henry Frederick. Jean-Philippe d'Orléans. He was born in August 1702 and he died in June 1748. His age was 45 at the time of his death, and the reason for his death was undisclosed. He was a French prince of the blood of who became the Archbishop of Rouen, known for his religious devotion and administrative skills. He was later created the Grand Master or Grand Prior of the Knights of Order of Malta in France, which had previously been filled by the Chevalier de Vendôme, who had resigned. Vendôme was a grandson of Caesar de Bourbon, illegitimate son of Henry IV. The resignation of his position occurred with the permission of Pope Clement XI on 26 September 1719. He commissioned the artist Jean-Marc Nattier to decorate Palais du Temple, the Parisian residence of the Grand Prieur. James Thomson. He was born in September 1700 and he died in August 1748. His age was 47 at the time of his death, and the reason for his death was undisclosed. He was a Scottish poet, best known for his celebrated works like The Seasons and the lyrics of Rule Britannia. Thomson may have attended the Paris School of South Dean before going to grammar school in Jedburgh. In 1712, he failed to distinguish himself there. Thomson entered the College of Edinburgh in autumn 1715, destined for the Presbyterian ministry. At Edinburgh, he studied metaphysics, logic, ethics, Greek, Latin, and natural philosophy. He wrote Spring in 1728 and finally Autumn in 1730, when the set of four was published together as the Seasons. During this period, he also wrote other poems. Edmund Gibson. He was born in 1669 and he died in September 1748. His age was 79 at the time of his death, and the reason for his death was undisclosed. He was an English bishop and historian, remembered for his scholarly contributions to ecclesiastical history and the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle. He was a British divine who served as Bishop of Lincoln and Bishop of London, jurist and antiquary. In 1716, Gibson was presented to see the Lincoln, whence he was in 1723 translated to London. For 25 years, he exercised influence, being consulted by Sir Robert Walpole on ecclesiastical affairs. He served as a founding governor of a charity called the Foundling Hospital. His endorsement can be seen as significant since the Foundling Hospital, created by the Royal Charter, was the nation's first non-church initiated institution to target this sort of social ill. Anne Bracegirdle. She was born in 1671 and she died in September 1748. Her age was 77 at the time of her death, and the reason for her death was undisclosed. She was a prominent English actress of the Restoration and early 18th century, celebrated for her beauty and virtue. Most of the plays she performed in involved singing as well as acting. She often performed music written for her by the composer John Eccles and also sung music written for her by Henry Purcell. She became particularly well known for the song I Burn, which Eccles originally wrote for her to perform in Thomas Durfee's play The Comical History of Don Quixote in 1694. She also sang music by Eccles in the play The Richmond Hares in 1693 and in William Congreve opera The Judgment of Paris. John Belgai. He was born in August 1686 and he died in September 1748. His age was 62 at the time of his death, and the reason for his death was undisclosed. He was an English theologian and moralist, known for his philosophical writings defending rationalist views. He married in 1715. It was the year in which Bishop Hoadley preached the famous sermon, The Kingdom of Christ, which gave rise to the Bangorian controversy, and Belgai, under the nom de plume of Sylvius, began his career of authorship by taking the side of Hoadley in his controversy against some of his high church opponents. In 1741, he published an essay on redemption containing somewhat advanced views. Isaac Watts. He was born in July 1674 and he died in November 1748. His age was 74 at the time of his death, and the reason for his death was undisclosed. He was a prolific English hymn writer and theologian. Isaac Watts is often called the father of English hymnody. He was an English congregational minister, hymn writer, theologian, and logician. He was a prolific and popular hymn writer and is credited with some 750 hymns. His works include When I Survey the Wondrous Cross, Joy to the World, and O God, Our Help in Ages Past. He is recognized as the godfather of English hymnody. Many of his hymns remain in use today and have been translated into numerous languages. Charles Seymour, 6th Duke of Somerset. He was born in August 1662 and he died in December 1748. His age was 86 at the time of his death, and the reason for his death was undisclosed. He was a powerful English nobleman, known as the Proud Duke, influential in politics and society during the early 18th century, according to the Encyclopedia Britannica 11th edition. He was a remarkably handsome man and inordinately fond of taking conspicuous part in court ceremonial. His vanity, which earned him the sobriquet of the Proud Duke, was by word among his contemporaries and was the subject of numerous anecdotes. Macaulay described him as a man in whom the pride of birth and rank amounted almost to a disease. Marichi Arends. She was born in 1712 and she died in June 1748. Her age was 36 at the time of her death, and the reason for her death was execution. She was a Dutch woman executed for leading a bread riot in Amsterdam, symbolizing resistance to oppressive taxation. She was a Dutch fishwife and a rebellion leader, sentenced to death as one of the three instigators and leaders responsible for the so-called Pacta riots of 1748. The Pacta riots were caused by tax conflicts and began in Amsterdam on 17th June 1748. The discontent escalated on 24th June. During 2 days, 19 houses of landlords were plundered. She was quoted saying that they had plans to conquer the city hall and proclaim a revolution. Ignacia del Espiritu Santo. She was born in February 1663 and she died in September 1748. Her age was 85 at the time of her death, and the reason for her death was undisclosed. She was a Filipino nun who founded the Religious of the Virgin Mary, the first all-Filipino religious congregation. She was known for her acts of piety and religious poverty, and founded the Congregation of the Sisters of the Religious of the Virgin Mary, the first native Filipino female congregation with approved pontifical status in what is now the Republic of the Philippines. Mother Ignacia del Espiritu Santo was declared venerable by Pope Benedict XVI on July 6, 2007. She led a life of public prayer and labor which attracted other Filipino laywomen to live with her. She accepted them into her company, and though they were not officially recognized as a religious institute at the time. Empress Xiao Qiaxin. She was born in March 1712 and she died in April 1748. Her age was 36 at the time of her death, and the reason for her death was malarial fever. She was the first empress consort of the Qianlong Emperor of China. She was known for her modesty, wisdom, and influence on the palace life. In the draft of History Qing, Empress is described as a respected and virtuous person who looked after the people in her palace, serving her role well. She was praised and favored by her husband, It is also said that she did not like spending money on her own aggrandizement and wore artificial flowers in her hair instead of expensive jewelry. Muhammad Shah, he was born in August 1702 and he died in April 1748. His age was 45 at the time of his death, and the reason for his death was undisclosed. He was a Mughal emperor known for his cultural patronage and leadership. During the declining years of the Mughal Empire, Muhammad Shah's reign was marked by rapid and irreversible decline of the Mughal Empire that was exacerbated by Nadir Shah's invasion of India and the sacking of Delhi in 1739. The course of events not only shocked and mortified the Mughals themselves, but also other foreigners, including the British. Thanks for watching the video. Please don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Have a nice day.